Hello guys, Void here. We're going to be going over the top 10 best Boros colored cards in the Commander format. As always, we're going to start off this list with some honorable mentions. The first one we have here is Deflecting Palm, very similar to like a fog effect, something like that. However, this only deals with a certain source, so a creature or a burn spell, something like that, not a player trying to attack you or not just all creatures in general. So it can be a little bit risky if your opponents are swinging out, but it is a fun little trick and it does see some play in specific strategies where you want to protect yourself, or you want to play sort of like a group hug strategy, or even something like Queen Marchesa, where there is a purpose in forcing your opponents to not attack you and attack each other instead of you. This is a fun little trick to punish them if they decide to do so. And I like it, it's a fun card, but unfortunately it's not as powerful as the cards on the top 10. The next we have Akiri Lineslinger. There's another partner in these colors that's on the list though. Akiri, I just don't think it makes the cut. I think she has a lot of potential as Voltron, obviously. Getting +1/+0 for each artifact you control. It's just incredible for Voltron, and she can get pretty big, and obviously want to throw in as many equipments as you possibly can into that type of deck. Make her gigantic. She does kind of partner pretty well with Silas Wren, which is the blue-black partner that came out in the same deck, the Brea deck. So she has a lot of potential. I don't think it's right now as good as she could be, but definitely there's something to look forward to if they ever decide to continue the whole partner mechanic. Then we have Kalemni. I don't know how to say her name. I've never known how to say her name. Disciple of Iroas. If you love Giant Tribal, she is fantastic. However, I do not love Giant Tribal, and I feel like that's the biggest problem with her. Out of all the tribes, I think Giants are one of the most boring because there is the least amount of support for it, and you have Inferno Titan and Sun Titan, and that's really what you can expect out of the Giant Tribal. You have others there, but they're not really going to help you speed up your deck, and really in Boros, you don't want to play a gigantic creature-based deck. You want to play a more aggressive beatdown-based strategy, and this could definitely try and be a beatdown deck, but unfortunately, what's the problem with Giants? They tend to be too big, and in Boros, you want something smaller, something with haste. You want more tokens if you can, and you want to swing in with your whole team, because that's typically what Boros wants to do. So unfortunately, Kalemni just didn't make it. And then we have both Huatlis, the Warrior Poet and Dinosaur Knight. Only two Boros Planeswalkers that aren't on the list, I believe, and honestly, I think that the Warrior Poet is a little bit better than Dinosaur Knight. Dinosaur Knight, by the name, is a little bit more focused around dinosaurs. Warrior Poet does have a minus that gives you a little dinosaur token, but her plus and alts are not dinosaur associated. So you have to just take into consideration the fact that her plus is also just going to gain you a bunch of life, which in Boros isn't really what you want. And her alt just deals damage divided, which I've never been a big fan of, just these massive, just divided damage spells and stuff like that anyway in Commander. I just think that, burn spells, unless you have permanents that can burn your opponent over the course of a game, like a Perforos, I'm just not a big fan of the whole burn strategy, anything like that. But her alt is just a little bit too weak, and her plus, again, not what you want in the format. So now we move on to the actual top 10. Number 10, we have Ajani Vengeant, one of the Boros Planeswalkers that did make the list. He has a plus that basically makes a tapped permanent. If it's already tapped, it doesn't tap it down. It's not like Tameo, so you have to keep that in mind. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So that right there is kind of what you want to do in Boros. You want to slow down your opponents, and if at all possible, make yourself quicker. So it does one of those things pretty well. And then the minus deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 3 life. 3 damage, it's not going to really open up the possibilities there. There's only so much you can really deal with just 3 damage, but it is there, and you do gain 3 life, so I guess it's somewhat removal. His alt, however, is just incredibly powerful, destroying all lands that a target player controls. It's not necessarily commander friendly, which is why he's only number 10. I would rather just destroy all lands, because honestly, destroying all lands that target player controls, unless you're playing dual commander 1v1, I don't really see this as being a considerable thing to do. Even in a competitive multiplayer game, you are just targeting one player out. This is why so many people hate Soren Markov for his minus. You are singling out one player, making it painful for them to continue the game, if not just downright impossible. So destroying all their lands, they're not going to be able to come back, which makes him powerful enough to make the list. However, He's just not really commander friendly, to be honest, so he's not any higher than that. I still think he deserves to be on the top 10 though. Number 9 is Adriana, Captain of the Guard. One commander option I think is very underrated and has a ton of potential. From Conspiracy 2, she has melee, and she gives all your other creatures melee. So if you don't know what that is, whenever your creatures attack, they get +1/+1 for each opponent you're attacking. That right there is going to be amazing with tokens. If you are playing in a multiplayer format, which is what this is not a 1v1 list, by the way, you are going to be able to make the most out of your little 1/1 tokens. Throw in something like an Elspeth Sun's Champion, get a ton of little 1/1 tokens, start swinging in, they all get this massive buff. Yeah, it's most likely going to be either +2 or +3 power, so they're not going to be that big. But still, I mean, take into consideration that your whole deck is going to be built around Adriana and just getting these massive hasty creatures or just getting a ton of hasty tokens. And that's never a bad thing when you can just give an Anthem-like thing on attack. That's pretty good. Number 8 is Bruce Tarl, Boros Herder. This guy also has a lot of potential. I feel like when he just came out, people were like, he's not that good. He just deals with double strike. But really, I mean, there's a lot of good cards in Boros in this format that deal with double strike. And on ETB and attack, you get to have one creature get double strike. I mean, that's not bad. He's definitely inclusion in a lot of these red-white Voltron decks. Then there are a ton in the format already, but even with Naya, say something like Ural the Miststalker, something that's based around getting your one creature as big as possible or capable of dealing a massive amount of damage, giving your creature double strike is fantastic. And again, the fact that he does have the partner mechanic makes it to where if there ever are any more partners in the future, the potential is there for him to see an increase in playability because of that. So I think that right there is the reason why he deserves a spot on this list. Just a fantastic commander card and definitely a lot of potential. Number 7 is Boros Charm. Now, right off the bat, I'm just going to say burning a player for 4 life is not going to really matter that much. Yeah, 4 damage. That's kind of a big deal in Standard. It was kind of a big deal then, and it's kind of a big deal in Modern if you can get it off. But in Commander, it's a little bit weak. Obviously, you want this for the fact that you can make your permanents indestructible until end of turn. So any type of board wipe effect, you can just dodge it, get around it like that, and your whole board state survives. That's very important. And you can also give another creature double strike. So you have a lot of potential here, and in Boros, this is exactly what you want. You want a tough team. You want something that's going to give double strike. And I also think that protecting your side of the board is also important as well. Number 6 is Master Warcraft, a 4-mana instant where you get to control which creatures attack and which creatures block. And you have to do this before attackers are declared. So ideally, you want to use this on your opponent's turn. And right there, you get to control which creatures are going to get killed, because that's likely what you want to do with this. Or you can use this to where if you are the more aggressive deck, you get to swing in uncontested with a creature that you like, force your opponents to block something that they don't want to block, and have something bite the dust. Or you could just have your creature swing in uncontested, deal commander damage easier, deal more damage easier. I don't think it sees enough play than I think it deserves. Definitely a lot more potential here. And if Boros gets a lot more support here in the future, we could definitely see a lot of these cards on this list in a lot more decks. Number 5, we have Nahiri the Harbinger. Her +2 is basically a reverse loot effect where you have to discard first and then you get to draw a card. Her minus, though, is where it's at, and it's why she's so high on this list. You get to exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature. There's a lot of potential there, and getting rid of enchantments, that's pretty solid. A lot of artifacts tap and a lot of creatures tap, so that's why there's that condition there. So you can get rid of their best mana rock, or you can get rid of their best creature. Ideally, though, exiling removal is going to deal with just about anything you want to deal with. Her ult, however, is fantastic. You get to search your library for an artifact or creature card, and you get to put it on the battlefield and then shuffle your library. That gains haste, but you have to return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So ideally, you want to get out something massive like an Eldrazi and then swing with it because it has haste. Or you could get out your best artifact. Maybe you're going to combo off with that artifact and win on that turn. So either way, you're likely going to set yourself up to win. So you really shouldn't be worried too much about the end step return it to your hand condition, because I think it's a little bit insignificant. Other than that, though, she's a fantastic planeswalker, and she's definitely the best one in these colors. Number 4 is Assemble the Legion. This card is fantastic. At the beginning of your upkeeps, you get to put a muster counter on Assemble the Legion, and then you put a 1/1 red-white soldier creature token with haste on the battlefield for each muster counter on Assemble the Legion. So over the course of a game, if this is left alone, you are going to be getting just more and more of these soldiers. It's going to keep increasing, 1 counter each turn, 1 counter each upkeep, and you're going to keep getting more of those little tokens. And over the course of the game, you're just going to have a gigantic army. It's also good if you want to play more of a defensive strategy like a pillow fort, such as with Queen Marchesa. All that deck wants to do is just protect the queen. So anyway, you can get a ton of bodies there to block for you if you choose to go that route, and you get a ton of bodies to attack with. So if you have something like an Adriana, Captain of the Guard, something that encourages you to attack with numbers, because you get a huge buff on all of your creatures if you do that. Just a fantastic card, and it's really simple, but it's a 5-mana enchantment that sits on the field. If your opponents remove it, they preferably want to do it earlier. At worst, it's just going to get removed earlier in the game, but still pretty solid enchantment in these colors, very unique. Then number 3, we have Iroas, God of Victory. Basically gives your creatures menace, and it prevents all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. So ideally, this is perfect for Boros, and that's why he's higher on the list. He's a perfect card, because all you want to do is keep the pressure on your opponents by attacking as much and as often as you can. And you get rewarded for it, because your creatures, they're just not going to die unless your opponents are capable of exiling them, anything like that. Damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures is prevented, so there's really an incentive there to just keep attacking, because your creatures also are not going to be able to be blocked for the most part unless they get double blocked. Definitely a perfect inclusion into just about any single combat-based deck in these colors. Number 2 is Aurelia the War Leader. If you love extra combat steps, she is the perfect commander, because she gives you extra combat steps every time she attacks for the first time each turn. So if we just exclude something like Narset out of the picture here, she is ideally what you want for extra combat steps. Fill your deck with a ton of those extra combat step cards. This is perfect. You want to keep attacking, you want to keep the pressure on. Everything I said before about these colors, keeping the pressure on your opponents. The more often you get to attack, the more often you get to trigger other effects, stuff like that. You get rewarded for dealing combat damage and a lot of other cards as well. Can't really say too much else about it. I mean, the more you attack, the better. Then we have number 1, which is Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. She is honestly the best Boros colored card in this entire format. Once she hits the field, she just affects the entire board. Very unlike a lot of other cards in these colors. Essentially being able to half the damage that your opponent's creatures would do is fantastic. It's also fantastic because it doubles the damage from anything of your source would deal. It would deal double that damage. So right there, if you have any burn spells, if you have Perforos effects, stuff like that, they deal double the damage, and it's just incredible. So as soon as you get her out there, she's just going to put in so much work into your decks. Into any game, she's just going to warp around her, and that's why she's honestly the number 1 best Boros colored card, in my opinion. So anyway, guys, let me know what your favorite Boros colored cards are. That was my top 10 list for the best Boros colored cards in the Commander format. Anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off.